What if I told you that a single photograph, crumpled up and thrown away like garbage, would expose one of the most shocking miscarriages of justice in American legal history? That this discarded image would not only free an innocent man after 23 years behind bars, but reveal a conspiracy so deep and so corrupt that it would bring down an entire sheriff's department. This is the story of how one man's trash became another man's freedom. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at a crime scene photograph the same way again. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because stories like this don't come around often, and you won't want to miss what comes next. August 15, 1987. Millfield County, Ohio. 22-year-old Marcus Williams was sentenced to life in prison for the brutal murder of local businessman Harold Reeves. The conviction seemed airtight at the time. Marcus had been found with the victim's wallet, his fingerprints were on the murder weapon, and he had no solid alibi for the time of death. But here's what made this case unusual from the very beginning: Marcus Williams was blind. Not legally blind. Not partially sighted. Completely blind since birth. Yet the prosecution's entire case hinged on the theory that Marcus had somehow navigated through Harold Reeves' sprawling rural property in complete darkness, located him in his workshop, and beaten him to death with a crowbar, all while supposedly maintaining the stealth and precision of someone with perfect vision. Even more bizarre. The murder weapon was found hanging on a pegboard 8 feet off the ground. How does a blind man locate a tool that high up, in an unfamiliar workshop, in the middle of the night, without making enough noise to wake the victim? The defense attorney at the time was a court-appointed lawyer who had never handled a murder case. He failed to call a single expert witness about blindness, never questioned how Marcus could have committed such a visually dependent crime, and put Marcus on the stand where he was torn apart by an experienced prosecutor. The jury took less than 4 hours to convict. For over 2 decades, Marcus Williams rotted in Millfield State Penitentiary, filing appeal after appeal, all of which were denied. But in 2010, everything began to change when the Ohio Innocence Project took on his case. Attorney Sarah Chen was immediately struck by inconsistencies that should have raised red flags 23 years earlier. Chen's investigation uncovered the first shocking inconsistency: the timeline made no sense. Marcus had been at a local diner until 11:30 p.m. on March 3, 1987, 12 miles from the victim's house. The diner receipt was timestamped 11:27 p.m., with 3 witnesses confirming Marcus was there. Yet the coroner placed the time of death no later than 11:45 p.m. It would have been physically impossible for Marcus to get to Harold Reeves' property in time to commit murder. "That's when I knew we weren't just dealing with a bad defense," Chen said. This was something much worse. Chen's team re-examined the physical evidence and found deeply troubling problems. The fingerprints on the crowbar were upside down, as if someone had pressed Marcus's unconscious hand against the tool. There were no palm prints anywhere, which would be impossible if someone had actually gripped the weapon. The victim's wallet found in Marcus's possession still contained over $300 cash, and Harold Reeves' $3,000 Rolex was undisturbed on his nightstand. What robber leaves money and expensive jewelry behind? Most shocking, Chen found original crime scene photos that had never been shown to the jury. In the basement of the Millfield County Sheriff's Department, Chen's investigator found a box of evidence that had been misfiled and forgotten for over 20 years. Inside were dozens of crime scene photographs that had never seen the light of day. What those photos revealed was explosive. The workshop where Harold Reeves was murdered was in complete disarray, tools scattered everywhere, shelving units overturned, equipment smashed. It looked like a tornado had gone through the space. But here's what made no sense: if Marcus Williams, a blind man, had committed this murder, how could he have caused such widespread destruction without being able to see what he was hitting? Even more importantly, the photos showed clear evidence of a struggle. Furniture was overturned in patterns that suggested Harold Reeves had fought back against his attacker, moving around the workshop, knocking over equipment as he tried to escape. A blind attacker would have lost track of his victim immediately in such chaos. The logistics of the crime, as revealed in these hidden photos, made the prosecution's theory not just unlikely, but completely impossible. Chen knew she had grounds for a major appeal, but she needed more. She needed to know why these photos had been hidden, and who was responsible for what was starting to look like a deliberate frame-up. That's when she decided to track down everyone involved in the original investigation. Chen's attempts to interview the original investigators hit dead ends. Detective Ray Morrison had retired and refused to speak. Evidence technician Paula Hayes had vanished. Sheriff Tom Bradford had died in a suspicious car accident 3 years after the trial. The one investigator Chen could find was Deputy Frank Castellano, now retired. When they met at a coffee shop, Castellano went white at the mention of Marcus Williams' name. 2 days later, he called asking to meet again. This time, he had something to show her. "I can't live with this anymore," Castellano told Chen at their second meeting. "What we did to that kid, it's eaten at me for 23 years. In March 1987, the sheriff's department was under pressure. Sheriff Bradford faced re-election, and the Reeves murder investigation was going nowhere. When they found Marcus Williams passed out drunk near the scene, Detective Morrison saw an opportunity. Marcus was harmless, Castellano explained. Just a sad kid who drank too much. But Morrison saw the perfect fall guy, blind, no family, history of drinking. What happened next was systematic frame-up. Morrison planted Marcus's fingerprints on the murder weapon while he was unconscious, planted the wallet in his jacket, and contaminated the crime scene. Most shocking of all, they knew who the real killer was. Harold Reeves was involved in illegal gambling and owed money to a Cleveland crime family. He'd been killed by mob enforcers, but those men had connections that could destroy careers and lives. Morrison got orders from higher up to find another suspect. After Castellano's confession, Chen knew she had enough evidence to free Marcus Williams, but she wanted to understand how this conspiracy had finally begun to unravel. That's when Castellano told her about the photograph. In December 2009, Castellano was cleaning out his garage when he found an old box of personal items from his early days as a deputy. Inside was a crime scene photograph he had accidentally taken home 22 years earlier, a photo that showed something that would have destroyed the prosecution's case if it had ever been seen by the defense. The photo showed Harold Reeves' workshop before it was cleaned up by investigators. In the background, clearly visible, was a wall calendar. The calendar showed the wrong month. According to the official police reports, Harold Reeves had been murdered on March 3, 1987. But the calendar in the workshop showed February, and it was torn off at February 28. Harold Reeves had been meticulous about changing his calendars. His wife confirmed that he changed them religiously on the 1st of every month. If he had been alive on March 3, that calendar would have shown March. The photo proved that Harold Reeves had died in February, not March, which meant Marcus Williams couldn't have killed him, because Marcus had been in jail for public intoxication for the entire last week of February 1987. For 22 years, this photograph sat in Castellano's garage, the key to an innocent man's freedom gathering dust next to old Christmas decorations and forgotten sporting equipment. "I kept looking at that photo," Castellano told Chen. "Every time I cleaned the garage, there it was, staring at me. I knew what it meant, but I was too scared to do anything about it. Too scared of what Morrison might do, too scared of what would happen to my career, my family." But in 2009, Castellano's conscience finally won out over his fear. He threw the photograph away. The story could have ended there, with Marcus Williams dying in prison and the truth buried forever in a landfill. But fate had other plans. Miguel Santos worked the night shift at the office building where Frank Castellano had thrown away the photograph. As he was emptying trash cans on December 15, 2009, a crumpled piece of paper fell out of one of the bags. Santos almost threw it back in the trash, but something about the image caught his eye. It was clearly some kind of official police photograph, showing what looked like a crime scene. But what was it doing in an office building's dumpster? Santos took the photo home and showed it to his daughter Maria, who was studying criminal justice at the local community college. Maria immediately recognized the significance of what her father had found, this wasn't just any crime scene photo. The evidence markers and official stamps indicated it was from a major investigation. My daughter told me we had to call the police, Santos recalled. But I was nervous because I'm undocumented, and I was scared of getting in trouble. She convinced me it was the right thing to do. Maria Santos called the sheriff's department and was eventually connected to Detective Lisa Park, one of the few honest cops left in Millfield County. Park recognized the photo immediately. She had reviewed the Marcus Williams case files as part of a cold case unit and remembered the workshop crime scene. But she also noticed something that made her blood run cold: this photo had never been included in the evidence files. Park launched a quiet investigation that eventually led her to the Ohio Innocence Project, who were already working on Marcus's case. When Sarah Chen saw the photograph, she knew immediately that it was the smoking gun they needed. On June 18, 2011, Marcus Williams walked out of Millfield State Penitentiary a free man. He had served 24 years for a crime he couldn't possibly have committed, his freedom finally restored by a crumpled photograph that had been saved from a dumpster by a janitor's conscience. The photo evidence, combined with Castellano's confession and the timeline inconsistencies, had convinced a judge to overturn the conviction and order Marcus's immediate release. But the story didn't end with Marcus's freedom. Detective Ray Morrison was arrested in Florida and charged with evidence tampering, perjury, and deprivation of civil rights under color of law. He was convicted and sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. The investigation into the sheriff's department revealed a pattern of corruption that went far beyond the Williams case. 7 other convictions were overturned, and the entire detective division was disbanded and rebuilt from scratch. Sheriff Tom Bradford's death was reopened as a suspicious case after investigators found evidence that he had been planning to expose the corruption before his fatal car accident. That investigation is still ongoing. I met Marcus Williams last year at a coffee shop in Columbus. At 58, he moves carefully but confidently with his guide dog, Justice. People ask me if I'm bitter, Marcus told me. Of course I'm bitter. I lost my 20s, my 30s, my 40s to those bars. But that janitor, Miguel Santos, he saved my life by picking up that photograph. That's faith in humanity right there. Marcus now works with the Ohio Innocence Project, helping other wrongfully convicted people. I can't see people's faces, Marcus said. But I can hear truth in their voices. And I can hear lies too. Maybe that's why I survived, because I knew I was telling the truth. The crumpled photograph now sits framed in Sarah Chen's office, a reminder that justice sometimes comes from unexpected places. Frank Castellano lost his pension but volunteers teaching literacy. Miguel Santos became a citizen and his daughter works as a victim's advocate. The Real killers were never caught, but Marcus Williams is free. Sometimes justice is about freeing the innocent, even when you can't catch the guilty. Did you find this story as shocking as I did? What did you think of this case? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more long-forgotten cold cases, because some stories stay buried. Until just one evidence, finally speaks. And sometimes, the truth is worth waiting 23 years to hear.